Today I want to share with you something profound, something that has to do with the laws of the universe and all the mysteries we often overlook, even when they're right before our eyes. These laws are always there. They're woven into our everyday lives. They shape our inner world and the world around us, quietly, constantly, yet so many of us move through life unaware. I'll be honest with you. I'm almost 50 now, 48 this year, and it's only in the last 4 or 5 years that I've truly begun to feel, to live this understanding. Before that, I'd heard of these laws. I knew them, but in a shallow, surface level kind of way. The truth hadn't yet settled into my bones. It's like watching an apple fall from a tree, or seeing things drop from a table, leaves turning gold and drifting to the ground. We all witness these things. They happen every day right before our eyes. But how many of us, like Newton, pause and wonder? How many of us look deeper and realize there's a force, a principle, a truth behind that simple fall? Newton called it gravity. But what about all the other laws? The invisible ones guiding our emotions, our relationships, our choices. They're there, all around us. Yet we don't see them. Until one day, maybe your little child asks, "Dad, why does the apple fall?" At first you try to explain, but by the 10th question, you're frustrated. What kind of question is that? Apples fall. That's just what they do. What? Do you expect it to float into the sky? And that right there, that's how many of us respond. We've been conditioned since we were young. We've been trained to accept what we see, never to question it. But here's the truth. What seems obvious might not be obvious at all. What feels normal might be the surface of something far deeper. Behind the ordinary lies the extraordinary, behind the visible, the invisible. And if we're willing to look, to ask, to feel, we just might glimpse the laws that hold the universe and our lives together. But have we ever truly stopped to notice? To really understand how this quiet, invisible law has been operating beneath the surface, shaping our lives in ways we often fail to see. How it influences not just our external reality, but starts from within, from the soul, from the depths of our consciousness, from the quiet stirrings of our emotions and inner world. Have we ever considered how it plays out in our relationships, in the way we do business, the way we work, earn, and strive to survive? When I finally decided to study this law seriously, about 4, almost 5 years ago, I dedicated 3 whole years to it. And let me tell you, there aren't many books out there that explore it in depth. You see, one of the great laws that governs this universe, one that sages and wise people across generations have always emphasized, is the law of cause and effect, the law of karma, of planting seeds and reaping the fruits. It may sound simple, even obvious, just like watching an apple fall, but truly naming that law, understanding it deeply, and living by it, that's a whole different story. To apply this law not just as a concept, but as a way of life, in how we grow ourselves, how we navigate relationships, how we build a family, a career, even in the smallest things like learning to make decisions rooted in awareness of cause and effect, that's when things begin to change. Because choosing a partner, starting a family, that's a decision. And our life? It's really just a long series of choices. Even not choosing is a choice. And if you look deeply enough, you'll see that too, won't you? Your friend says, "Hey, let's grab a coffee this Sunday." And you reply, "Nah, I'd rather stay home and watch a live stream. Way better." That response right there, that's a decision. Saying yes is a decision. Saying no is also a decision. And that's the thing. This law, this universal principle, it shapes us whether we're aware of it or not. Even when we think we're doing nothing, it's still interacting with us, constantly. I've applied this law in countless situations, especially in difficult ones. Back when I didn't understand it deeply, I didn't use it much in everyday life. In ordinary situations, I'd forget it. But when I found myself in tough spots, really tough ones, that's when I'd pull out this law of cause plus condition equals result. And that's when it made the biggest difference. Have you ever been backed into a corner by life, truly pushed to the edge with no way out? What do you do then? That's when this law becomes a lifeline. In those moments where everything is blocked, every road feels closed off, like you're trapped in a prison with no key, this law can be the key. And I've seen it. I've shown it to friends in impossible situations, when everything felt hopeless. And once they applied it, sometimes the problem resolved in just 2 days. The longest, maybe a week or 2. It was that powerful, that miraculous. So later on, feel free to drop your questions in the comments, especially those of you who are facing really tough situations where every path seems blocked, every door seems shut. Remember to bring up this question during the Q&A at the end, and I'll share more about how I used to apply this principle back in the day. These days, though, I apply it with a lot more flexibility. After 3 years of deep study, serious study, I've read texts going back thousands of years. The teachings of the Buddha, from both Theravada and Mahayana traditions, from both southern and northern schools, I've studied them all. I've observed how these laws play out in real life. I've listened intently to talks by great teachers online and viewed those teachings through the lens of cause and effect. And when you do that, when you really see things through that lens, your insights become sharper, clearer. I began to reflect more deeply. In major projects and decisions, when is it appropriate to apply the law of karma? And when is it better to simply analyze things in a straightforward, logical way? Then, one beautiful day about 2 years ago, when we had just launched our project Sowing Seeds with Great Minds, a project entirely rooted in the principle of karma, we were gifted a book by a teacher from the Two Duke School system. A dear colleague gave the book to both me and my wife. It was called Reinventing Organizations. In Reinventing Organizations, it describes companies that operate based on 2 things, sensing and responding. That phrase caught my attention immediately. Sensing, that, I thought, resonates deeply with the capacity for mindfulness, with the observing mind. The part of us that remains quiet, still, and simply notices, without judgment, without rushing to conclusions. That inner stillness, that mindful sensing, if you let it observe long enough, deeply enough, then you can respond. The book uses the word respond. Now, when we came across the word respond, we felt something wasn't quite right. It carried a slightly negative tone. Maybe it was just the way it got translated into Vietnamese. But to us, responding wasn't quite the heart of it. What it should be is this: we sense, and from that sensing, we choose. We sense, and from that awareness, we make a decision. Because sensing, in its purest form, is how we collect information, objectively, without bias. When we gather data with clarity and mindfulness, our capacity for true understanding begins to activate. That's when we start to see what is the cause and what is the effect. Alright, now I'd like to ask the organizers to put the slide up on the screen, and to everyone here, please like, share, and drop your questions in the comments. Ask any question that's been weighing on you, especially if it involves a significant decision. Whether it's a moment where every path seems blocked, or a decision about launching a project, or even something as personal and meaningful as choosing a life partner. Let's focus on the decisions that truly matter. Your questions will become real-life illustrations of how this universal law can be applied in our everyday lives. It's so simple. so deceptively simple that we often overlook it. Just like an apple falling from a tree. How many of us truly understood it until Newton came along? Without him, would any of us be sitting here talking about it today? The laws of the universe, the unseen forces, cause plus condition equals result, and all the variations that flow from the law of karma. Now, when we came across the word respond, we felt something wasn't quite right. It carried a slightly negative tone. Maybe it was just the way it got translated into Vietnamese. But to us, responding wasn't quite the heart of it. What it should be is this: we sense, and from that sensing, we choose. We sense, and from that awareness, we make a decision. Because sensing, in its purest form, is how we collect information, objectively, without bias. When we gather data with clarity and mindfulness, our capacity for true understanding begins to activate. That's when we start to see what is the cause and what is the effect. All right, now I'd like to ask the organizers to put the slide up on the screen. And to everyone here, please like, share, and drop your questions in the comments. Ask any question that's been weighing on you, especially if it involves a significant decision, whether it's a moment where every path seems blocked, or a decision about launching a project, or even something as personal and meaningful as choosing a life partner. The law of cause and effect, karma, has many layers, many variations. We've seen countless versions of it floating around online. One day, I'll take the time to walk you through a dozen of them. Because if you look deeply into any real law of life, you'll see echoes of karma inside it, always. The image of cause and effect is there, subtly woven in. And those so-called laws that don't reflect cause and effect at all? Well, then they're not really laws. They're just made-up ideas, things we invent, call laws, but that don't hold up. Because a true law must be repeatable. It must work consistently across different situations. Only then can it be called a law. You see what I mean? Now let's take a moment to see how this concept of cause and effect is understood in the West, just so no one thinks I'm talking about superstition or something vague and mystical. Because in the West they also teach karma. They don't always call it that, but it's the same principle, cause and effect. The language is different, but the law is the same. So I did a quick search online and found some simple illustrations that help explain how they frame it. Let's look at the first image, on the left side of the screen. You'll see a few pieces, some brown, one red. All of them are separate. That represents conditions that haven't yet come together. In this case, there are 4 pieces, 3 gray ones and 1 red. Since they're scattered, they haven't formed anything yet. Nothing has happened, no result, no outcome. But then on some perfect day, when all 4 pieces come together, they form a square. That's the result. That's what we call the fruit, the effect. It only emerges when the right causes and conditions converge. And this isn't just theory. It happens all around us in daily life. Just look at the table you're sitting at, the chair you're using. If you take that table apart, what do you get? 4 legs, a flat surface, and maybe a couple dozen screws. That's the physical structure, the hardware you can touch and see. So we've got 4 legs, a handful of screws, and a tabletop. But there's also something you can't touch, something less visible. The effort of the craftsman, the thinking behind the design. Someone had to imagine that table, plan how it would come together. It was the mind and labor of the maker that brought it all into form. That unseen element, that's part of the cause too. It's the same idea as those 4 foam pieces in the diagram, 1 red, 3 gray. They have to come together, fit perfectly, align just right for the result, a solid square, to appear. And just like that, the table functions in the same way. Even the table we use every day follows the law of cause and condition. There are 4 core elements, and when we're talking about physical things, natural objects, it's often fine to call all of them causes or all of them conditions. In this context, the terms are almost interchangeable. The tabletop, the legs, the screws, they're all essential. If just one of these parts is missing, the table can't be assembled. It doesn't exist. That's the principle of cause and effect. So many conditions, so many contributing elements, all aligning, all connecting, and only then does the result emerge. In Buddhism, there's a beautiful, profound term for this: interdependent origination. It might sound lofty, but when you look deeper, the meaning is elegant and simple. Everything arises through the meeting of countless causes and conditions. Interdependent origination means a vast web of causes and conditions, layer upon layer, arising together, overlapping and intertwined. Nothing stands alone. Nothing comes into being by itself. Take something as simple as a table. At first glance, it looks like it's made from just 4 legs, a tabletop, and a few screws, plus the labor of the craftsman who assembled it. But that's only the surface. If you look deeper, you'll see that each part of the table is already the result of countless other conditions. That tabletop, it came from a tree. But that tree didn't just appear. It grew in a forest for decades, maybe even a century or more. It drew strength from sunlight, water, soil, wind. All of those were conditions that shaped the wood. Even the grain and texture of that wood is a result of those years. That's interdependent origination. The same is true for the legs and even for a single screw. A screw is never just a screw. It's the end result of an entire process. In Buddhist teachings, we never speak of just one single cause. There's no such thing as a single reason behind anything. Instead, we speak of interdependent origination, a phenomenon that arises only when many different conditions come together and support each other. Let's begin with the raw material, the metal. Where did that come from? From ore, and that ore. It took not years, not centuries, but possibly hundreds of millions of years to form deep beneath the Earth's surface. Layers of geological activity, pressure, minerals. All of that shaped it into what we now call metal ore. Then what happened? Humans had to discover and extract that ore through mining, digging, and transporting. Hundreds, maybe thousands of people were involved. Then it was sent to factories, to smelting plants, where it was processed, refined, melted down into steel. And even that isn't the end. That steel had to be shaped into a small screw through precision machinery, quality checks, packaging, distribution. Each stage required knowledge, tools, labor, and effort. So even a single screw is a perfect example of interdependent origination. That's how profound this law of cause and effect truly is. It tells us that everything, every object, every event, every phenomenon arises due to causes. But not just one cause, never just one. It's always a web of causes, a network of conditions coming together. Whether we see one or many depends on how closely or how far back we choose to look. If we only look at what's near, what's recent, we might say there are 1 or 2 immediate causes. But if we trace it back farther and deeper, we may find thousands of causes leading up to that single moment or result. And does that change the way we're affected? Absolutely. It opens our eyes to the complexity and beauty of how everything comes to be. Now take a look at the illustration in the center of the screen. It shows one cause leading to 3 effects. At first glance, that might seem simple. But remember, this is still interdependent origination. Because if we kept tracing back, kept following the chain of events even deeper, we would find more causes behind that single cause. The farther back we go, the more layers we uncover. But for simplicity's sake, let's stop at a single moment in time. Let's say this is the point we choose to call a cause. Just one seed, one action, one condition. And then within 5 days, or within 1 month, it gives rise to 3 results. But what if we extend the timeline? What if we zoom out beyond weeks, months, into years, lifetimes, even generations? That one cause might no longer yield just 3 results. It could lead to 3,000 or 3 million. That is entirely within the nature of how karma unfolds. So when we say a single cause leads to 3 effects, it's only because we've set a boundary in time. We've decided to measure within a limited window. Just like planting a single grain of rice, it might sprout and grow, and from that one plant it produces 100 more grains. That's cause and effect. That's the multiplication of karma over time. Can you picture that? But if we don't stop there, if we keep going, imagine what happens next. You take those 100 grains of rice and plant them again. Then what? How many more grains will grow from that? And from those, how many more? That's what we mean by interdependent origination. Layer after layer. Cause upon cause. Condition upon condition. Now let's look at the image on the right side of the screen. You'll see a young boy, or maybe a dog or a monkey, holding a flame. And accidentally, he sets a house on fire. That fire begins with a small act, but within 1 or 2 hours it becomes a burning building, a total transformation. What connects the moment he lit the fire to the moment the house was in flames? Time. There's a timeline running beneath this whole process, a cause and then, later, an effect. This is key when we talk about cause and effect. We must always take the dimension of time into account, because cause and effect don't always happen in the same moment. But sometimes they do. There are moments when cause and effect arise simultaneously, and those happen in the mind. For example, if you suddenly feel hatred or malice towards someone, if, in an instant, your mind gives rise to an unkind, harmful thought, then right in that same moment, you'll feel the result. The result is emotional discomfort. Your heart tightens, your chest feels heavy, your mind is uneasy. Just watch it closely and you'll see. The very moment you generate a negative intention towards someone, your own mind suffers. The cause and the effect arise together, simultaneously, but only inside the mind. That is what we call mental karma, and in that space, cause and effect are immediate. When we talk about cause and effect as it plays out in real life, in the external world, not just in our thoughts or emotions, it always involves a timeline. There has to be a passage of time between cause and result. Take a simple example. You buy a table online, maybe from Tiki, maybe from Lazada. They deliver the parts to your home, a tabletop, 4 legs and a few screws. Now what? You have to assemble it yourself, right? You can't expect it to magically appear in front of you fully formed in the blink of an eye. That doesn't happen. It takes time. Time to put the parts together, to tighten the screws, to set everything in place. That's how life works. That's cause and effect playing out over time. Or think back to the earlier example of the monkey. It's just playing around, messing with fire. Suddenly it sets a house on fire. But the house doesn't burst into flames instantly. It might take 15 minutes, half an hour or more for the fire to grow and fully consume the house. This shows that whenever a cause is planted, there is a process, a period of time, before the effect fully manifests. That process might be short, or it might be long, but time is always there. There's no such thing as instant karma in the external world. Instantaneous cause and effect only happens within the mind, in those fleeting moments of inner thought and feeling. Let's be very clear about that. Alright, now let's move on to the second image. In this next visual, we see how companies in Western countries, and in Japan as well, apply the principle of cause and effect directly into their production systems. They use cause and effect models to improve efficiency, design workflow, and manage outcomes in manufacturing. So here's what we begin to see. They've drawn what's commonly known as a fishbone diagram, a visual tool used to analyze cause and effect. In this model, you'll find branches labeled with key categories: management, manpower, machine, material, and so on. And what are these? These are all causes, or more precisely, conditions, what we might call interdependent causes in Buddhist thought. This is a form of interdependent origination. In this diagram, they've laid out 6 major causes, 6 core factors that contribute to the result. These are the main conditions. After that, they begin to add in more supporting causes. For example, was there proper training? Was communication clear? Were there clear work standards in place? These smaller factors are added as sub-branches beneath each main category. One by one, they map them out. And when all 6 of these major factors, plus the relevant sub-factors, are properly aligned, when everything fits and functions together, that's when a result appears. In Buddhist language, we'd say the conditions have ripened into fruit. That fruit is the final product, a finished item coming off the production line. But if the result is a faulty product, say a defective TV, then what happens? The team must trace the problem back. They go back and examine each of the 6 core factors to figure out which one contributed to the defect. Is it a human factor? Was there a mistake on the worker's part? Was the issue with raw materials? Was there a machine malfunction? Was it a flaw in the process or procedure? Was there a training gap? They go back and investigate every possible cause, all the way through. That's how cause and effect is used, not only as a philosophy, but as a practical tool for problem solving and quality control. So when they finish checking all the contributing causes, the faulty points become clear. 1 or 2 root causes usually emerge. Once they identify and correct those specific causes, the TV that previously came out defective will now come out fully functional, problem solved. This is how they apply the law of cause and effect in manufacturing, to find the root of the error and to fix it at its source. And this brings us back to what we said earlier. Everything has a cause, whether it's obvious or buried deep in the past. When a TV rolls off the production line, whether it's flawed or perfect, there's always a reason behind it, always. That's why they use this model to map out 6 core causes, so that if any TV is defective, they know right away. One of those 6 causes must have gone wrong. That's why in the West, and in many capitalist countries, they're incredibly quick and practical in how they apply ancient wisdom. They use these timeless principles, like cause and effect, in ways that help them produce better, faster, more efficiently. To make money, that's the way they do it. But let's not forget something important. This wasn't the original intention of the sages, the masters, the enlightened minds who came before us. The great teachers of old, the wise ones from spiritual traditions across time, they didn't pass down the law of cause and effect for the sake of manufacturing. They passed it down as a guide for how to live. They left it to teach us how to live well, to live in harmony with nature, to stop going against the flow of life, to stop resisting the natural order. Because when we fight the laws of nature, we end up damaging not just ourselves, but the world we live in. When we overproduce, when we over-extract from the earth, what are we doing? We're destroying it. That's all. So you see, the true meaning behind this ancient wisdom goes much deeper. It's not just about productivity. It's about living with clarity, with understanding. It's about building a life that aligns with the rhythm of the universe, not one that breaks it.